Oh, hey guys. Must be a Wednesday. Let's get into it. First off, I'll show you what I've been working on. This is the main character from Skybridge Embers of Elecra, Annette. Sorry, I'll say that in more human speed. Skybridge Embers of Elecra, the game. This is one of the two main characters, Annette. And I'm going to turn that off because that looks kind of painful and sort of like it came out of a horror film. Okay, turn that off. So that's the skeleton. So what this is the Metahuman base model with the head combined. Just take the clothes off here for a second so you can see how it's working a little bit. There's the head, there's the body, and she doesn't have any feet, but I don't think that's a big problem. So this is one mesh, the shirt and pants. I made this about a year ago in Marvelous Designer, and I haven't optimized it at all. I just exported it as a high poly clothing model, which is fine because Unreal Engine 5 can handle that. I have done lots of retopology and different optimization tricks on character clothing over the years, but I find that you can set the settings up as high as you can in Marvelous Designer, you know, granted without your computer crashing or freezing. You can set them up as high as you want and export them, and Unreal Engine 5 can usually handle them at the zeroth or base LOD, sorry, not a light emitting diode, a level of detail. So at the highest level of detail, it can totally run anything the Marvelous Designer can produce, or that I've found so far, unless you put lots and lots of layers, I guess. But anyway, enough of that. So how did I do anything more than look at this? So once you have your clothing in here, you can see that I've also customized the base mesh. She's wearing a corset, and metahumans normally aren't wearing corsets. So I'll make some more videos and show you guys how that works as well. That's a process worth knowing how to do. So interestingly enough, I had made this clothing to fit on the Metahuman base mesh before I deformed it. But once I deformed it, it was fairly straightforward to deform the clothes to fit the corseted base mesh without any weird deformations or stretching taking place. I'll make videos on all of that stuff too. So once you got your clothing on here, and if my Blender loads and isn't frozen totally, I'll show you some more on how this works. So all the clothing was in here together, and I combined it as one mesh or one object inside of Blender. So this is a full clothing object that fits the base mesh in its default pose. And I had just named it day clothes. And then I will show you how I skinned it. So let's just consider for a moment that this clothing mesh, which I've called the head mesh, pretend that it's not the head mesh. Pretend that it's actually a clothing mesh. Okay, guys, because say it was this one. In fact, why don't we just, to make this make more sense, I'll just click this mesh, unparent it. You unparent objects by pressing Alt-P. I'm going to clear it and keep the transformation. Alright. We're just going to exit all this stuff out. So this is how it was when it came in. Just pretend it is a mesh that's not skinned to your rig. So you're going to have to line it up unless you've built it on the Metahuman that you're working with here. So anyway, line it up, edit it so that it fits, do whatever you need to do to get it close to the skin. And once it is close to the skin, we can move on with this next part, which is where the magic happens. So you click on your day clothes or whatever clothing object you got. Sorry, I'm getting tired because I've recorded this video 4 or 5 times and my audio hardware is messing up on me. So you put a data transfer modifier on your clothes object. Okay. Select your Metahuman body mesh as the source, and so you want to pull information or data from that body mesh, and you want to replace. What do you want to replace? You want to replace some information on your clothes. So you want to replace the vertex data. You want to replace the vertex data groups. Vertex groups in the vertices on your clothes. So that's all good. It looks good. You want to select it as the nearest vertex, which it probably is by default. Once you have that all set up, you hit generate data layers. After that's done, you can exit that out, but you're not quite done yet. So click armature, add an armature modifier on here, and this time you select the armature as your object. This is all correct by default. Then you just want to parent that to the root, or stick that in the root. Make sure the root is the armature. There's a few ways you can do this. You can select them, like hold control and select the armature as well, then hit control P. But this isn't the way I recommend doing it, because you've already got your vertex groups and you don't want to clear them out by selecting empty groups. I mean, you probably can do object keep transform. That should be fine. Yeah, so that would be the default way of doing it. Object. So select your clothes, then select your armature, hit control P, and set it to be, sorry, what was the option I selected? Yeah. Select your clothes, hold control, select your armature, control P, object keep transform. You can do it that way is easy, or possibly even easier for you depending on your preference. Hold shift, click your clothes and drag them onto your armature and let go. Once you let go, it does exactly the same thing. It sticks them in there. And that armature should now deform these clothes. So if you select a bone that would deform that part of the arm, it will deform that part of the clothing. I've already tested this many times, and I can tell you it would work if I did that now. However, the polygon count is so high on this, it'll lag like crazy, especially because we're on video and it's important that it doesn't lag. It'll be crazy if I did that. So anyway, interesting. So then you'd go in here and you can see I already have these imported, but the way to import them is quite simple. We'll just go ahead and delete these ones actually, because these aren't the ones on my character anyway. Delete them. Now, obviously it's not recommended to force delete generally, but I find that if they're not referenced anywhere, it's okay to do it on occasion. So you'll import, excuse me. Actually, first let's export, since you haven't seen that yet. So when you export, you click on your armature, then you click on what you want to export with it. You can hold shift to do it, or you can just hold control and select the two things. So you hit export, FBX. Selected objects is always a good idea, especially if there's other things in your scene. Transform is generally right by default. Go into geometry, set on face. By default it is normals only. That'll throw an error. Just select face. You do want to apply your modifiers. So into armature, sorry, not amateur. That would be me. So go into armature. Now leaf bones. I generally add them. Uncheck bake animation, and then we're calling this devlog Annette clothes FBX. You call it whatever makes sense for your file. Okay, so hit export FBX, then you can jump into Unreal and import that model. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. So you want to import the skeletal mesh and the mesh. That's fine, geometry and skinning weights. Skeleton, you don't want to leave it unchecked because basically it'll get confused and have problems. So generally what you do want to do, which I don't know why it's showing that, it shouldn't be showing bricks, is get the same skeleton as your metahuman. Just do that, it will save you problems. So get that skeleton. Don't know why it's not letting me. I guess because it already is there. I don't have animations on this, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. If you do, I guess check it. So I'm going to have it search for the materials locally, since it's FBX, and have it create new materials. You don't have to create materials if you want to set them up manually. I just find that it does help to create them with the import. You don't have to manually make any that way. But that's up to you. And it'll take a second to import. Now, you will find this issue a lot. And there's an easy way to fix it when you're exporting, which I forgot to do. But when you're exporting FBX, sorry, it's not in here. It's actually when you're importing it. But you can go to the advanced, or the animation section, I guess it is, in the import, and set use T0 as ref pose, and then it won't have this error. But this is really just a warning. I mean, it shows up with a warning symbol, and it will only do that once when you first import it. But in this case, if it's just a warning, you can ignore it, because what it does is it sets T0 as reference pose to your model. Okay, enough about that. So here's the model. You can go inside, look at it. You may want to check that your different things are correct here. So you can go look at the skeleton. Aha! Slight problem that the mesh is sticking through the clothing there. Little visual error on this particular file. But that won't be an issue when you get it into the editor. I know, because I've done this so many times with this particular file. It can be an issue sometimes though, and you might have to go back into Blender and edit things a little bit. Usually you can trust Marvelous Designer to do a good job though. So we're gonna go ahead and change this material, because the material is not supposed to be white. And like I was saying before, you can set that up manually, generally, but I've got one here that's already set up that I prepared earlier. So I'm just going to use that. Go back in. So it was important, and I should have said, if you're on it, if you see the material you want, you click it and highlight it. So it's blue, perfect. Then you can go back to your other window, and you can just hit use selected asset from content browser. So if it's blue, then you know it's selected. So there you go, guys. There's what it looks like. Cool, hey. And then you can save it. Okay. And then you can go, let's see if I've got one in here. Oh, I do have one. Perfect. Here is a Metahuman body that has just default non-clothing. This is not Annette, but I think it will work well to show you what's going on here. So first thing, we want to change this body, because you'll see this is the default Metahuman female body that does not have a corset. It's actually the medium normal weight body, and we want the tall normal weight body. So we're just going to go browsing in the content folder for a second. Female, tall, normal weight body, and this one has the corset shape built into it. We're going to use selected assets from content browser, and there's a little change going on there. She looks taller, I'd say. Okay, and then finally, when you're putting clothing on, it's important that you put it on one of these. If you can put it on just inside of the body, you can do that. But it's easier to just, select the skeletal mesh asset that you're looking for. So normally, if it's full body like this, I'll go to the torso, because that's the center of the body. It's, obviously the main part. So we're going to fold this down, open up a content browser. Okay, so you select that clothing, which is in wherever you put it. I put it in Annette Sculpted in the closed folder, which I just added that folder myself. In the closed folder, I imported it there. You click on it to select it. You open this back up, and so again, I'm on the torso, and skeletal mesh asset, you put it here. You use the little arrow to use the selected asset from the content browser. Okay, now we are seeing that that's causing a bit of disturbance. A couple issues here. Some poke through on the mesh, you might even say. There are a few ways to deal with that. One is that we could actually turn this into a simulated physics mesh, like a physical cloth, and simulate it. The way I would generally prefer to do it, though, is I would go ahead and export the body and the clothing together, because then I know they're aligned properly. So let's do that quickly. FBX, and all your settings are already correct, so we don't need to change those. Even the name is correct. Export that. And we'll fold down Blender. Even when you're in here, you can actually just hit Control Space, and up comes your content browser. And that's the file that we want to re-import, so right click it and select re-import. This time it should have the body file attached to it as well. And if this happens, and it does happen quite a lot, just hit reset to FBX. You don't want to be fiddling with all that stuff. It can cause errors and problems for you, that's for sure. Now it will have errors for other reasons as well, but I think we can live with these a little more easily. So first things first, we're going to jump to the newly imported asset, open it up, have a look at what's going on. Okay, so there is some poke through going on, which is, a surprise to me, to be perfectly honest, because it hasn't happened on the other files, but we'll just have to deal with it as we go. So we're going to go back in here, select this, use selected asset, and then we're going to get this. It's an empty material because we've just added this new mesh to it, but I know that the material that it is the material that it's looking for is the character body material, this one. So you can go ahead and open the content folder with the content button, click on it so it's selected, then open this back up. So we go to here, now use selected asset, there it is. Okay, and now we'll have to do a little bit more work on this because there is still poke through. There really shouldn't be. There wasn't when I did it previously, but such is life sometimes. Go ahead and save that. And we'll go back over here and see what's going on. So you can see the poke through on this is much more pronounced. And if you go to the body, I would recommend, in general, just taking this extra body off because you don't need it now. Oh, maybe you do need it. Surprise to me. Just undo that. Okay. Well, this is why you should use the one that you built the clothing on. It does surprise me that this one is slightly offset. But, you know, it happens that way sometimes, guys. So, exit it. We'll go back, open the one that we actually made the clothes on. She doesn't have any clothes on either, so there we go. This is the one that I actually created the clothing on. She's got some little boots going on down there too. Feet. I'm just going to take those off because I don't really want to see those at the moment. So you click on the torso for her, and then you will go ahead and get the clothing asset. This is one that one thing that we can do that I'm fairly certain will work. No, it doesn't work. It's very surprising. Okay. Well, when I loaded it in earlier, it did work, so I must have done something incorrectly. Or not incorrectly, but just slightly different, a few pixels different than the way I did it before. So I'll use the one that I did previously, show you what it looks like. Get the little use selected from content browser, and it will come in. Maybe you guys even caught the mistake that I made there. I don't know. But you guys are pretty dang smart, so probably. Alright. So it's looking pretty good, if you ask me. Now, I mean, aside from the hair sticking through the cloth mesh, it's looking pretty great. And that's an issue more with the groom than it is with the cloth. So, anyway, yeah, we'll go ahead and save that up. Exit out, and then we'll go check out what she looks like. Beautiful. Beautiful, guys. So I really hope this helps you out. I hope that you're able to get some use out of it and that you're able to make something awesome with it. And if you have any questions or concerns, comments, you know, any thoughts you want to share with me, please post them in the comments down below. I'd love to know if you guys enjoy this kind of content or if there's anything else that you'd like to see more of. I have several videos coming up that will be similar or additional to this. And I guess I'll catch you guys on the next one. Keep well.